All right, so the next one that we're doing is number 4. And that is 13x squared minus 16x equals x squared minus x. And so we're going to have to start with the same step 1, right? Which is to set everything equal to 0. And when we're setting everything equal to 0, that means all of this that's on this side needs to move to the other side, right? So if I have x squared on this side, I need to subtract x squared from both sides. And if I have a minus x on this side, I'm going to have to add x to both sides, right? And what happens is I'm left with 13x squared minus 15x equals 0, right? And then step 2 said to identify our a, b, and c. So if we look at this, a is going to equal whatever's in front of x squared, and that's just 13. B is whatever is in front of x. Well, that is negative 15. And C, we don't have a constant, right? So we're just going to call that 0. So when we go to plug it into the formula here, I'll write the formula over here so you can remember it. Minus b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac over 2 times a. Right? And now we're just plugging things in. So we've got our x equals minus b. Well, b is negative 15, so it's minus negative 15. Plus or minus negative 15 squared minus 4 times 13 times 0. And that times 0 makes things a whole lot easier because this whole end piece just becomes 0. Over 2 times a, which is 2 times 13, right? So we did all of our plugging in. Now we're going to do our solving, right? Our simplifying. So negative times negative 15 just becomes positive 15 plus or minus. Negative 15 squared, I put this in parentheses so that the negative's in there too, right? 15 times 15 is 225. Minus 4 times 13, it doesn't matter what it is because it's all times 0 at the end. So this whole side of it becomes just 0, right? And minus 0 just means we're staying at 225. 2 times 13 is 26. And so what makes this convenient right here is that makes this 15 plus or minus 15 divided by 26. So if we look at this, when we break it up into our two problems, we've got 15 plus 15 divided by 26, which if we look at that, that's 30 divided by 26, which is 15 over 13 when we simplify it, right? That's one of our solutions. Our other solution is 15 minus 15 divided by 26, which is 0 divided by 26, which is just 0. It is not undefined. People sometimes will think it's undefined because there's a 0, but you can have a 0 on the top of a fraction, right? It's only undefined if it's in the denominator of the fraction. So our two solutions for this one are x equals 0 and 15/13. Let's try and get one more done, and that will only leave you with a couple, right? We can get one, maybe two more done. Trying to see if they, I don't think they get harder as they go. They seem to follow the exact same pacing, so I'm not worried about jumping ahead to like the end ones, where I might be with other problems because they get harder as you go. So let's look at this example. Well, it's not an example, it's number 6, right? Where we have negative x squared plus 18 equals 93. Now this is an interesting problem, right? First of all, we don't have an x value, so we could have just taken the square root of both sides, except for this specifically tells us we need to use the quadratic formula. So when we do this, we're going to subtract 93 from both sides. And I'm going to get minus x squared. I don't know. I don't know what that is right off the top of my head. Negative 75. So we've got x minus x squared minus 75 equals 0. So when we go to find our a, our b, and our c, what's our a? Well, it's just what's in front of the x squared, right? We never use the actual x squared. So when you have that negative, it just means you have negative 1, right? Here's the tricky part. What's our b? No, this is our new equation right here. B always has, A is what comes before the x squared, right? B is what comes before x. C is just a number. Is there anything before x? Do we even have an x? B would be 0. We don't have an x value on this one, right? We have an x squared and we have a constant, but we don't have an x. And our C is just negative 75. So what's going to happen here is when we fill out this formula now, right, which I'll rewrite here again, x equals minus b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And when we go to plug those numbers in, we get x equals minus b. Well, that's just minus 0. Plus or minus b squared. Well, that's just 0 squared. Minus 4 times a is negative 1, and c is negative 75. All over 2 times a, which is negative 1. And so this just got a whole lot easier to solve. Anytime you have zeros in something, you should be relieved because it makes it easier to solve, always, right? Because negative 0 is just 0. So we're left with plus or minus whatever is underneath this thing. Well, 0 squared is still 0, right? So really what we're looking at, negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4 times negative 75. So we're going to have something negative, and it's going to be negative 300, right? And it's important. That negative is really important because if you remember a while back, we talked about how to deal with negatives under a square root. Do you remember when we dealt with imaginary numbers? And anytime you had a negative under square root, you could just pull it out as I, right? So technically, we could write this as plus or minus I times the square root of 300, and then we don't have to worry about it being negative anymore, right? And then we have to find the square root of 300. But when you think about that, that's 3 times 100, right? Well, 100 is a perfect square. It's 10 times 10. So we can pull 10 out, but we have to put the 3 back under. So we're going to be left with plus or minus 10i times radical 3 over negative 2. And I would love to say that that's the end of it, but we can still use that negative 2. We could divide, and we could get plus or minus 5i. This gives us both our solutions, right? It gives us the plus and so it's 5i radical 3, and it's a negative 5. Probably is. I made sure that there was one like this on the test. So I think we can squeeze in one more. What do you think? I think we can do it. I think we can force ourselves to get one more in. I need a good color, Warren. Pink. We can make any color we want here. We could do rainbow. Let's go rainbow, but like not rainbow like this. Or we could do the darker rainbow though. I think it'll show up better. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it does. It looks like space. So we did number 6. Let's do number 8. And then you'll only have to do 10 and 12. Awesome. Ooh, I like this color. I'm keeping it in my wheelhouse now. So we've got 5x squared plus 1 equals 4x minus 7. My phone is like blowing up right now. I don't know why. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to move these over, right? I have a positive 4x here, so I'm going to subtract 4x minus 4x. And I have a negative 7 here, so I'm going to add 7 to both sides. And then I'm just going to combine things. I've got 5x squared minus 4x plus 8 equals 0. Oh, this is my new favorite pen. Yeah, right? It's so cool. So when we go to look for our A, we know it's 5. Our B, negative 4. And our C equals 8. So nice clean numbers for us. They'll probably trick us with something down the road on this, but it doesn't look like it. So again, we've got x equals minus b plus or minus b squared minus 4 times a times c over 2a, just so that you have it there to go by. X equals minus b, well, that's minus negative 4. Plus or minus b squared, so that's going to be, sorry, the square root of b squared, so it's going to be negative 4 squared minus 4 times a is 5, c is 8 over 2 times a, which is just 5. So now we're going to do our simplifying, right? So we've got negative times negative 4, that just gives us a positive 4. Plus or minus the square root of 4, negative 4 squared is 16. And here I have minus 4 times 5 is negative 20. Negative 20 times 8, I think, is 160. Negative 160. I better check on that, though. 4 times 8. So I was right? Okay. So we've got negative 160 minus 16 plus 16. So what we're left with here is going to be 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 144. And that's where we're going to find our issue in that, right? Is the negative underneath the square root. But we know how to take care of that, right? We just pull it out as an I, and then it's not negative anymore. So we could write it as 4 plus or minus I times the square root of 144 over 10. What is the square root of 144? It's a good perfect square. There's a number times itself that equals 144. So we can write this as 12i. over 10. Now, everything here is divisible by 2. So we're going to write this as 2 plus or minus 6i over 5. I can't reduce it any more than that. That is as good as it gets for us. We did all that and we finished with a minute to spare. No, we didn't. It's 11 right now. We finished right in the nick of time. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recorder.